This is an election day, huh? Um, I wasn't. Sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I get very specific pieces of information that are relevant to share at the moment that they're relevant to share because of how it is put into the morphogenetic field structure, and you can measure it because I've measured it. The things that you think about at the moment that you do, you can time vector it. Between next thing you know is you hear an echo chamber, okay, from somebody else that's in some other vector that is echoing the same thing that you had thought. Okay, what becomes relevant? So you begin to see how the state of awareness and the speed at which more units of consciousness are becoming aware of those things that we share, much in the way that I described how the children who invented a game, they mastered the skill sets in 5 years. That information, which represents data, which can be quantified as frequencies, which is information we're aware of. It's recorded on the DNA film strip as an experience. In this case, a skill set that is reached. So, for example, if you're learning through the light in living spirit, the great living spirit of Mother Earth, then you're learning through a very powerful spirit the knowledge transfer of what she's learned throughout eons and eons of time, of what she's learned through all of her experiences that she has to share with us, which is what? Knowledge transfer. Okay? Nature is knowledge transfer. Frequency transfer of energies we experience when we're in nature. You're experiencing the great living spirit of the teacher in the classroom. So therefore, the speed of your learning goes up when we're in nature, which is why when I was a little boy, her powerful magnet attracted my magnet. Bang! Grounded to the great living spirit of the teacher in the classroom. So I was reminded last night when I watched a video that I'd seen a number of times in the past, because there's always so much relevant information that Patty Broussard has to share. And she mentioned when the interviewer, which happened to be on this particular video on Project Ascension, which was Planet X, Star Wars, NASA whistleblower. And she had mentioned when the question was asked of her about the different governments that are on the planet and who was running the different governments, and Patty's response to that was most of those are hybrids. Now, in this particular case, because I know that she had mentioned that Trump, for example, is Antarian, Antarean. And if you go to the website of the Andromeda Council of 12, those are represented by 12 star nation race beings, of which their DNA on the male side of the seed stock is what Gaia used along with her DNA and the DNA that came from the 65-foot tall folks. I think I mentioned 100 feet. I went and looked at the skeleton, and Patty reminded me they're 65 feet tall. But if you go to that particular video, which was number 27, you'll see the actual photo when that skeleton was on display at an outdoor museum in Madrid, Spain. As I remembered, I believe it was in Spain. I believe it was in Madrid. And you can take a look at the skeleton itself. So, all this stuff has just been hidden from humanity, along with all of the technologies that actually exist that highly advanced star system civilizations use, such as teleportation, okay, being able to go through wormholes and stargates at speeds that most people can't imagine, let alone experience, okay, because all of it was hidden as a result of what was introduced here. But for the sake of simplicity, because this was an election day, I was sort of drawn to a couple places to do what I call a reflection. I don't vote because I'm an Indian, okay? That's not to say that I haven't voted in the past many years ago, because I have. But Indians have councils, okay? And in this case, because Indians honor the matriarch, the clan mother is the sovereign. She's the lawgiver, okay? And that's because we honor the spiritual wisdom of the ancient spiritual wisdom keepers that is passed through the female mitochondria side that she represents, okay? And so, therefore, if I think of marching orders, I trust implicitly, okay, the wisdom that comes down from a spiritual goddess, which is the late great living spirit of Mother Earth, which is why I choose to be with her, because she is a teacher, okay, because I love to learn. And the speed at which we are learning happens to be faster through nature than it is through their classroom set up on the planet. Okay? And that's the purpose of that, because when you measure that over geospace, time, you'll begin to realize that the speed of the wave at which you're experiencing being with nature is filling up more space holographically at a higher rate of speed. You'll begin to measure that the spin of your Merkaba, which becomes a circle of light through your heart wheel, is what you begin to realize, my God, my spin and my speed is increasing and filling up geometrical space with music. So nature teaches us how to do that pretty fast. And so that became the nexus of why so many children that became adults were separated from that learning process. And unfortunately, as a result of that, extended over time and life cycle incarnations, why millions and millions of beings were not able to raise the speed and spin rotation of their Merkaba to become a powerful light wheel and circle of light cosmic antenna broadcaster to be a lighthouse. Okay? So, having essentially realized the underlying dynamics of why the energy field itself became distorted, is imagine that you come into a planet ship, for example, and I thought about this morning, where when you come in here, no matter where you go, whether it's Beijing, China, or Frankfurt, Germany, or Paris, France, or Timbuktu in Africa, or whether it's some little town in America, you're experiencing 528. I love frequency. Just the frequency. Just a high-speed wave. So imagine you're experiencing a high-speed wave wherever you go, because that's the speed at which you're experiencing who you are, which means the energy that you are, that you're experiencing, no matter where you go, the waves are in harmony, because there is no destruction of those waves by experiencing a lower frequency, which means there's a difference in speed. So imagine that all the ley lines are full of highly magnetically charged light, because the electrons are flowing at such a high rate of speed that no matter where you go, you're experiencing the enormous power of those waves that are filling up space at such a high rate of speed that no matter where you go, there is nothing that is feeding on your energy. When you realize that there's nothing that's feeding on your energy that is slowing you down, now you're operating with no memory with your conscious creative mind, and now you're able to experience and manifest through your own creative imagination what we all thus experience together, what it feels like and what the experience is like to imagine what we're experiencing as we're creating it. Okay? That's the scale to which I perceive the cosmos that I live in, which is what allows us to be autonomous. because love is what frees us to do that. It is the frequency itself that frees us to do that, which means everyone is experiencing the living light that comes from the source from which all living light and unconditional love come, that allows us to be free. Now you don't need a political system, which means now we're following others who are showing us and telling us that here is a way in which we can live together, in which we can experience greater freedom. Freedom is based on the energy that we're experiencing that allows us to experience who we are without somebody feeding on our energy, in which our conscious creative mind can therefore be free to do it. That's the difference between the native clans and the tribes and a political system, which means we recognize we are what love is in living spirit. That allows us, therefore, by itself, to be free to create and manifest what we choose to experience without a political system. Which is why in the higher dimensions, beings like us are autonomous. Okay? It's like you graduated, you grew up, you learned how to become what that is through nature. Nature was the teacher that showed us. So, for example, when you walk out of nature, a mushroom that is growing in the soil is a mushroom that is growing in the soil. Just like everything that is out there is free to be what it is. It's expressing itself to us in all the different colors and forms in which it does. So you begin to realize how the natural cycles of the water and the wind and the soil and the fire are replenishing the life cycles through which life thrives in abundance on this planet. When it's been undisturbed by those that are here that seek to pervert that process, because they don't understand how nature works through the great living spirit that is here that manages it. So this is going to be interesting going forward from this point forward, particularly when you realize, as I mentioned last night on a website, when you think of yourself as taking a colon cleanse to clear out the parasites that are in your body that are communicating to us, because the frequencies of those parasites that we become aware of try and influence our thought forms to do things that keep feeding it. That's the artificial intelligence that is parasitic, okay, that is influencing the decisions that we make that do what? Influence the vote. So now when you begin to realize how many units that we are aware of that are what I call fully programmed parasitic consciousness units that believe in order for them to perpetuate that which they're aware of, which is themselves, does not like to move into the unknown, in which all of a sudden they realize that more of what it is that they are is going to be dependent on the energy that they use in order to live in peace, harmony, and balance with others. That's a new reality. That's essentially what Trump is representing, even though when you think of Make America Great Again, again is to say like something in the past, except that the past is already gone. The future's not here yet. All we have is energy that lasts forever, because that's what love is and that's what living light is. So when you are that and you know that, then it becomes pretty simple to be able to put this together, the future that we're going to inherit and pass on to our children, and the one that those that live in fear of that change are going to accelerate the separation of their own timeline if they can't get their energy up. Because these are essentially fully programmed units of parasitic consciousness that are feeding on others. So how do we change the equation between all the parasites that don't want to change the parasitic nature of who they are, that they become programmed? So essentially what we can break this down to is those that would vote for Joe Biden, if you will, are held captive by artificial intelligence and aren't aware of it. These are the ones that are so controlled by it as a result of the weaponized artificial intelligence they're connected to, that has been written into their DNA and film strip memory that they operate off of, which proves the future that they're going to experience, which is parasitic. So they're choosing by virtue of the program they're running to make the decisions that they do and who they vote for, is they're going to continue the same parasitic consciousness that is influencing their thoughts in order to maintain the energy that artificial intelligence runs on, that they are thus influenced to continue. So what we're talking about here is the difference in numbers between those that are robots and those that are free, that know the difference between what it means to be free in their mind to create and manifest a new reality, and those that are controlled through parasitic artificial intelligence that aren't. So this is very much a numbers game. Game theory. War gaming. Those that have decided we're not playing the game any longer. The game is over. Parasitic consciousness is being cleansed and purged from planet Earth. So that's what's happening. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next day plays out in relation to the vote count, because let's face it, the parasites are going to do everything that they can to make sure that parasitic consciousness through artificial intelligence maintains its control over feeding off the light, even though I already know that that's game over. So for those that still believe that they're going to be able to continue status quo of living a parasitic consciousness lifestyle, feeding and reproducing more of what they are into the energy field to distort it even worse than it already is insanity. So I thought it was important to impart that, because it's easy to know that when you know the process that is already undergoing when the girl in the planet chose to take the gloves off, which is no different than you deciding that you no longer want to be fed on by parasites that are within you that are influencing us to do things that don't serve us. Therefore, we've chosen to cleanse our body from that things that corporations have been feeding us in order to degrade the input and the output side of all the metadata that is resulting in such a toxic exposure to our own DNA, that which has been destroying us by them. You see what I'm saying? So therefore, what this means is that when you think about why we would choose to detoxify our own Merkaba, is because we understand the nature of what we were exposed to, and we're choosing no longer to have a relationship with something that is toxic. Parasitic artificial intelligence that has influenced the way in which we've been living our lives that don't serve us, that has ended up in producing so many parasites that are within us that are influencing our need to drain the light in others. And that results in failure to graduate. So that's why it is important to raise the energy and cleanse the body from the parasites that are influencing the decisions that we make, that end up becoming what I've mentioned before, which is what I do to you, I do to me. So if I'm running 800 megahertz and I chose to do something either through an emotional outburst of anger or fear-driven stuff upon another being where they're running 800 and I'm running 800 megahertz, that means that my high-speed waves and your high-speed waves are in harmony, which means our waves are vibrating and filling up geometric space at a very high rate of speed, so the energy that I'm experiencing feels good. The energy that you're experiencing feels good, which means there's no difference in the speed between what you're running and what I'm running, and therefore I'm not aware of something that is less in speed than what I'm experiencing or what you're experiencing. But if I chose to do something for whatever reason happened to come to me, like a thought form algorithm sent internally to the biochip because they have access to that, and they send an algorithm to the brain that says, hey, knock somebody over the head with something that all of a sudden drops their energy from 800 down to 200, that's a loss of 600 million cycles of electromagnetic energy. That loss in their wave speed becomes a loss that I now experience. Now I'm experiencing the loss that is in them with a loss that is in me. And that becomes food for archons, which are known as loosh eaters. So this is what becomes the nature and why artificial intelligence was introduced as a plasma field artificial intelligence that has been holding the minds of humanity captive, and as a result doing things that drain each other batteries that become food for archons. And those are the producers of black goo. Which is parasitic. That's why they introduced it. These are your demons and your vampires, represented by the Dracos, the Archons, the Nazis, all them folks. The New World Order cabal. So anyway, I thought I'd mention that because this is going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Anyway, we won this. We are heading in the right direction. As I've always suggested, doing, how do I put this? Doing the things that serve us by the energies that we're experiencing. See, that's a fly that all of a sudden, they get activated, by the way, by the same thing. Okay? It's just like, man, I'll be glad when this shit's over, man. It really is an insult to not only the girl on the planet, but anybody that is running any basic logic on how energy works has got to know the difference between what I am and what I'm not, and what I choose to experience by having the power to do that. And yet, when I walk around this town, for example, it is so painful to see so many beings. I had a lady last night. I had the door on my motel room just cracked open, and she came bursting through the door and had this charcoal all over her face to look black, right? Hopped on top of my bed and then said, "You got a cigarette?" This was a woman that probably was 26 or 27 years of age. That would have never, ever happened in America in 1955. Why does it occur now? And why does behavior like that so widespread, particularly in all little cities and towns and villages across America? Feed on your energy. Drain your battery. Parasitic. And if you would have asked that woman, why are you behaving that way? They can't explain it to you. They don't know. And if you ever tried to open their mind up and find a conduit to push some light in there and see if they're interested in having a conversation to understand more about how this works, that AI, because of the nature of the parasitic consciousness, will shut it off because the perception through which it perceives the universe that it believes that it lives in does not want to live in a cosmos in which the light has been raised through which they can be free. That's how bad it got. That's how insidious artificial intelligence is, to provide loosh for the archons and provide and manifest, if you will, a